Alright, what's up everybody? I'm here to do my second video for my top 50 favorite movies of all time. We're going to be going into the 70s now because I'm doing this in chronological order. But before we get there, I have one more movie I can't believe I forgot that's 1968, late 60s. So I want to squeeze this one in before we get into the 70s. This next movie, if you're a horror fan, you definitely know this movie, especially if you're a fan of classic horror films. And that is, of course, George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Yes, the often imitated but never duplicated Night of the Living Dead, classic. And this set the stage for all the zombie films that came afterwards. A lot of derivatives that came after this. But yeah, this is the classic. And, it's definitely scary. Actually, a couple of my friends and I agree that the first 5 to 10 minutes is the best part of the whole movie. I mean, the whole movie is great, but I don't know, there's just something about the first 5 to 10 minutes that I just love. I think it's the atmosphere mostly. And all I have to do is watch the first 5 to 10 minutes and it already puts me in a spooky, eerie, Halloween mood, which is why I always watch it around Halloween, just like I watch a lot of classic horror films like this around Halloween time, my favorites. And it's just a great, really ahead of its time. And even though it's in black and white, it doesn't matter. Although I think they have the color prints now you can find on YouTube and stuff. But it's scarier to watch in black and white. And what can you say? I mean, so many people have ripped this movie off so many times, and it was just, when it first came out, I was like, oh my god, it was really Psycho, this, Rosemary's Baby, and, several others. The Exorcist, of course, that had, people going, oh my god. But, yeah. So, obviously a big favorite of everybody's, and so I had to, before I get into the 1970s, I had to, mention this film, of course. So we're going to move right on into the 1970s. We're going to start with a couple of Clint Eastwood films, the first one being Clint's directorial debut, and that is another, kind of a horror film and to a certain extent, and that is Play Misty for Me. And this is, like I said, Clint's directorial debut. He did a great job, and I think it's great that Clint chose this as his first film to direct because Clint is so famous for being a cowboy and a cop, usually some kind of tough guy character, but it was cool to see him in something different as a jazz disc jockey. And I think that's cool. It really, really, really showed Clint's versatility, because at this point he didn't even this was right before Dirty Harry, so about 6 months before he did Dirty Harry, so he really he hadn't done that yet. He was just, at this point, he was just a cowboy, really, throughout most of his career up until this point. So it was really good to see him in a non-cowboy role. And I love the atmosphere in Carmel by the Sea, California. And I love the cast with Donna Mills, Jessica Walter, so many. Great cast. And also the music, great music, the jazz music. It was really cool. I love the opening theme. The big love scene with Clint and Donna with Roberta Flack's The First Time I Ever Saw Your Face. And just everything. It's just, Clint did a great job on his first feature film. And also got a cameo by Don Siegel, who's also director. And it's just great. I say fuck Fatal Attraction. It's all about Play Misty for me. This is the best one. And, it kind of reminds me, it's interesting too, because like another great movie that I love called Misery, directed by the Stephen King, it was directed by Rob Reiner, but it's a Stephen King novel with Kathy Bates and James Caan. The similarity is, usually with these types of movies, it's the masked stalker type of guy going after virgin girls, but in this case, and also with Misery, it's the woman stalking the guy. making the guy vulnerable, especially an alpha male like Clint and, and James Caan to a certain extent because he was Sonny Corleone, so he kind of has that tough guy image as well. But so it's interesting to have something different like that. Instead of the virgin running away from the masked killer, you have, a tough guy like Clint being tormented by a female. So it's interesting to have that, to have, the guy being the victim for once instead of it always being the woman being stalked and being the victim. So that was interesting and unique, and that's what I love about Play Misty, and later on with also Misery. And it was great. And Jessica Walter is amazing as a psycho fan, and she's just she did a phenomenal job. And anyway, it's just great. I love everything about it. My favorite scene, by the way, is when Jessica Walter's character goes into the boat restaurant, and she's like, oh, what is this? Be kind to Senior Citizens Week? And she makes a whole big scene in the restaurant. Stop it, you son of a bitch! She can get laid at a lumber camp. That was great. So it's really kind of funny, and also Annie Wilkes, Kathy Bates' Oscar-winning performance in Misery was another one where, she's just so great, and they're so psycho that it's just you can't help but laugh because they're just so great. I love psycho bitches like that, man. It's just great. Speaking of Clint and Don Siegel, we have another Don Siegel partnership here. Probably their most famous picture that either of them have done, and that's just right after Back to Back with Play Misty for Me, is, of course, if I can get it going. What's up? Why is my screen black? Why is my screen black? There it is. Of course, none other than Dirty Harry. Now, this is probably the best cop film ever of all time. I never really was a fan of Die Hard or Lethal Weapon. There's just something about Dirty Harry. I don't know what it is. It's just it was just awesome. I mean, Clint, of course, Andy Robinson plays such another great psycho character by Andy Robinson, who plays Scorpio. I think that was based on the Zodiac Killer. And again, great location in San Francisco. Great shootout. I just love the way the story builds. I love the music score by Lalo Schifrin. He has got that amazing. This is probably his best score. I just love the Scorpio theme, and it's just such an amazing, awesome theme. I mean, great score all around. And I love also the supporting cast: Randy Santoni, who was Lieutenant Bressler, Harry Guardino, great actor. I always liked him in the Clint films, and so many. John Vernon is the mayor. John Larch is the chief of police. Who was also in Play Misty. Also, he also played a cop. John Larch. So Clint has his clique of actors that he likes to bring in all the time. Jeffrey Lewis was another one in movies that came later, and many more. So I just love everything, the story, just the way it builds up, the action, the shootouts, and everything. Just, it has great suspense. My favorite part of the whole movie is when Scorpio takes Dirty Harry off in like a wild goose chase from the different phone booths around San Francisco and through the trains, and up to Mount Davidson Park, where Scorpio's wearing a red ski mask, and then Clint stabs him, and then he goes off, and where the San Francisco 49ers used to play at the Kezar Stadium. I think that was their last year before they moved to Candlestick. But that whole chase from the phone booth all the way down to the stadium, that's just like my favorite part of the whole movie. It's just such a cool, suspenseful, just great scene. I mean, it's kind of like a long chase. It's a good chunk in the middle of the film, but I don't know what it is. That's like the best everything. It has suspense, and then it builds up, and then there's a shootout, and then there's kind of a smaller shootout at the stadium where he shoots him in the leg, and Andy Robinson flips in midfield, and it just unbelievable. Just the best cop movie ever made. Well, probably Clint's, along with his cowboy films, the most well-known Clint Eastwood film ever, along with Don Siegel. And it just, everything about it I love, from top to bottom. The cast, the location, the music, the story, the characters, everything. So, can't say enough about Dirty Harry. It's the greatest cop film ever. I love it. And also I would say that the Dirty Harry is like the American James Bond. I've always felt that he was the American James Bond. Just instead of being CIA, he's a cop. San Francisco homicide detective. So that's kind of what I always figured. He was. Clinton was kind of the American Sean Connery, and so without the gadgets, of course, because Dirty Harry doesn't need any gadgets except just 44 Magnum. So, well, they do have that. Kind of reminded me of Q Branch in the when they do go on that goose chase with the ransom money. He has like that microphone thing. Kind of reminds me of like a Q gadget, sort of. So that was interesting. But yeah, so it's great. All in all, it's Dirty Harry and James Bond are the best action heroes. Either cop or secret agent of all time. Of course, there's others like Rambo and Lethal Weapon and Arnold Schwarzenegger, but this is just everything that came after this. I mean, everybody wanted to be Dirty Harry after this movie. So, yeah, so it was great. And I have another classic movie here coming up. Next up, some of you may know this from... Oh, well, I will say that there's another Clint Eastwood clique actor that has the most famous scene in this movie, and that is Deliverance. And the villain is, of course, Bill McKinney from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And you remember him in many Clint Eastwood films after he did Deliverance. And, of course, the main stars, Jon Voight, Burt Reynolds, Ned Beatty, Ronnie Cox, Cowboy Coward, who played the toothless redneck. Oh, I mean, this is such a interesting film. It was John Borman, who's from England, so it was directed by an Englishman, and of course, as the sheriff of town was James Dickey, of course, who was, God, he was crazy. He seemed real crazy. He seemed like, I think he was really like that. He was really like the sheriff. I think he got into a fist fight with John Borman. But this movie is one of the reasons why I absolutely hate the South, and I would avoid the South. I know it's fake, it's fiction, but like this movie just, along with the end of Easy Rider, where you going, city boy? Cut your hair, you gosh darn hippie. It just grosses me out. Just everything about I hate about the South. This just is the epitome of that. But aside from, the rednecks and the rape scene and the squeal like a pig, aside from that, it really is such a great, the characters, the way they start off as, being carefree and, we're in the nature, and then they kill, Bill McKinney's character, and so they're in a murder, and then, Burt Reynolds' character gets hurt, and Burt is like the alpha male of the group, and Jon Voight is kind of he's not the drama queen like Ronnie Cox's character or Ned Beatty, who gets raped. He's kind of like in the middle, and I thought that was interesting how they did that. And so Jon Voight's character has to turn into, once Burt's character is down, he has to become the alpha male and get up there and kill the other toothless mountain man, played by Cowboy Coward, and he has to get the bow and arrow, and he has to become the leader. And I thought that was interesting, and it's just the way the film progresses, and thankfully they get away with everything, and it's like a happy ending, but it's not a happy ending, and I thought it was just perfect. So I'm running out of time here because there's only 15 minutes on my recorder, so I'll do part 3 here after this. But yeah, Deliverance, unbelievable film. So yeah, so I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back for part 3.